Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the 10 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder of Financing Solutions. Financing Solution provides easy to set up lines of credit for small businesses, and I will be your host for today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast. If you are interested in learning more about a line of credit for your business, which I would highly recommend, I don't think in my 25 years plus, I never not had a line of credit. But if you want to learn more, go to fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com. Over the last 25 years, I've built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range, including 2 companies on the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in the United States. I love learning from people with business experience, and today I'm excited to be speaking with Lynn Robinson from Intuitive Consulting. Lynn is a best-selling author and popular speaker on the hot topic of intuition. She's talking to us today about how to tap into the power of our own inner CEO. Her consulting clients consistently praise her uncanny intuitive insights as spot on, resulting in increased personal clarity, creative solutions, and overall business success. Her latest book, Put Your Intuition to Work: How to Supercharge Your Inner Wisdom to Think Fast and Make Great Decisions, is out now. Lynn, welcome to today's Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
I love these podcasts. I really do.
I can tell. You're excited about this.
Yeah, I love learning. I just totally love it.
Yes.
I don't know any entrepreneur, right, who's successful, who doesn't totally love learning.
Yeah.
It's just, you got to do it. And I
learning
love
from
it.
others and learning and, listening to these podcasts is a great way to do it because you get to learn from people who've done it, which is wonderful.
Well, I completely agree with you. And that's, that's the big thing I've learned. I went to, I was a big part of entrepreneur organization, and the big part of the entrepreneur organization. And again, I've mentioned this in another podcast, but if you're an entrepreneur and you don't belong to that, you should be. There's over 15,000 members throughout the world. And, the reason I raise that in this context is that you are only allowed to speak in your meetings from experience. So you can't say, you can say it, but people may not like it, but they can't say, oh, well, I read this in this book and they say to do this. You have to have personal experience. Mm-hmm. And there's training for that as well.
Makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. So the reason why I kind of really do like today's topic, which is, how to listen to your inner CEO, and based on your intro that I read as well, one of my favorite authors is Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, absolutely.
And he, he really, really talked a lot about this in, I think it was Blink. Yeah.
And interesting, he never mentioned the word intuition. I don't think anywhere in the book, but it really is all what it's about. And I think we need it now more than ever, which is his book really makes the case for that.
Do you think that's intentional?
I have never read anything about that because honestly, that really is what the book is entirely about. So I don't know why he didn't do that. It tends to be a little bit of a woo-woo topic for sure. But listen, I think we need to use it more than ever because things are changing so rapidly, especially in our business world, that we can no longer just say, oh, well, we've always done this. This has been successful or it's been successful for others. We have to find some real creative, intuitive, inspirational new ways of doing things. So I think it's really crucial that today's entrepreneur use their inner CEO, my favorite word for it. Your inner GPS or your inner coach is another way of saying it. I think we need to use that more than ever.
Yeah, you know what I've always liked to do, and I think it was before Blink came out. I think it was just intuition for me,
Mm-hmm.
and that was I like to like have my intuition, but then I like to back it up by data.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's very common.
Yeah,
For me,
one of
for
the
me,
guy,
it's
one of
very. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
One of the guys that I introduced in the book said that very strongly. He had a business partner, and he said, "My business partner is the one that's always logic and rational and does the backup research." And he said, "I just trust my gut." But it's very interesting that they both, honestly, almost 95%, I think, is what he said. They came to the same conclusion, and he just said, "My way is faster."
You know
But yeah,
that
you have to use
baloney.
both sides. You have to.
95%. Then he's got to look at data closer. I don't know, but but I'm actually surprised how many times I have like I've done podcast. I did a podcast once about how to apply scientific methods to business decision making, where you come up with a hypothesis and then you go and you research the data, which is what a scientist does. And I find a lot of times I do that naturally. I'll come up with a hypothesis and then or theory, and then I go and I try to see if the data plays it out. And I'm
Mhm.
quite often it doesn't.
But
Like
have you ever had a time though where you just had a gut feeling that whether it was a person or a venture just wasn't right? There was something that felt off. And I think what's hard about intuition is sometimes you know something, but you don't know exactly what you know or how you certainly not knowing how to you know it. And I bet that you've had that experience a lot of times because a lot of times you can't apply data to something. You just have
no,
you meet
but the
somebody and it just goes,
right.
there's something off here, and you
Yeah, but I
there's
don't
really no research.
yeah, but I won't make a decision if I can't narrow it down to like if I have multiple if I can't figure out why I feel the way I feel, I will or I will try to either talk it over with somebody and narrow it down to get a handle on it,
Hmm.
because
Fair
I don't
enough.
want to make a decision, and it's not analysis through paralysis. I'm far from that.
Yeah.
But, if I'm going to fire somebody, right, I'm going to make sure I have my intuition is
Mhm. Backed up by some
backed up by
science or
something.
data. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, I wouldn't say no because you're right. I mean, like, so let's say you can't like so let's say someone doesn't fit our culture, right? They're a problem and they're wrecking our
Mhm.
culture. I can't put data behind that, right? That's an intuition thing. But what I would do is go around and check with the people who work with that person to say, hey,
Mhm.
I think this person is this way. Are you thinking that too? So
Right.
in essence, I am trying to use data to kind of back that ish
Mhm.
that person, but I'm not using numbers. So
I'll just push back on you a little bit there because I do think that there's a lot more instances where we do have to use intuition even when the data is saying yes to something. The one example I can think of in the Put Your Intuition to Work book was a guy who was building out some stores in a number of different states, and all the data indicated that these five cities states were going to be very successful on their right demographics for their business. And there was one that he just couldn't sign on the dotted line for. All the data said yes, and his gut said no. And it turned out this a few years ago was the hurricane in New Orleans, that they were going to build something in New Orleans, and if he'd built it there, it would have been wiped out within 6 months. So it's not something obviously the data could tell you. It's not something that you could go and I think the frustrating thing about intuition is because it doesn't say don't build a store there because the hurricane or the flooding is going to happen. You just have that feeling of but you don't know how you know or what you know. So
well, yeah, I mean,
mm.
I agree with you. A lot of times I'll think the data is wrong then. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll look at it
yeah,
and I'll say, wait a minute, this doesn't smell right.
yeah,
Something doesn't matter here. But I get you. Listen, I can't pick to every instance. I'm sure I'm doing exactly what you said.
yeah.
In a relatively small business terms, I've been successful,
Hmm.
and so, when you've been successful, you don't do new things. You
Right, right.
keep
Yeah.
doing what you've been
Doing,
doing, right?
yeah.
Now, listen, I haven't built $100 million company or
Mhm.
gone public. That's a different type of
Right.
person, a different type of skill set. But I've been at this for over 25 years, so
Mm.
I do trust what you
And
know.
how do you get your intuition, Stephen? I mean, I know how I get mine, but I think there's a lot of different ways one can get it. I mean, you said one thing you said was it doesn't pass the smell test. You mean sometimes that there's a way in which we get information in lots of different ways: a gut feeling, a physical sensation, an inner knowing. But it
Well,
sounds like you use both sides of your brain.
I think, so first thing is I think intuition is developed through experience, right? So that's number one. Number two is I read a lot, right?
Hmm.
Number three is I'm always educating myself. And you combine all those things up together, and along with a natural skill set of
Hmm.
I don't know, making good decisions.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
another part about it. That's I would say you mix all those things together, and it comes down to making better decisions.
Hmm.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I find it sort of an inner knowing, and I do somewhat similar to you. I try to back it up with a logical, rational, try to get some data around what I'm experiencing. I like asking my intuition questions. I think when you ask open-ended questions like, what could I do to grow my business? What could I do to get more clients? How could I be more successful? I always keep a pad and paper beside my bed and beside my desk, and I'm always kind of getting information but often I think we ask the wrong questions, like why am I not successful, or where did all the clients go, and I think when you ask more open-ended positive questions like that, just on an informal basis, we get really much more quality answers. And I like to, when I teach this to companies, I also like to do it, have the group do it. I mean, it may be kind of meditative, but just sitting, quieting your mind, closing your eyes, taking a few deep breaths, saying, what could we do to, fill in the blank, get more clients or grow the business or solve this problem? What would be the solution? And often I find that the information comes in later in the day when you least expect it. A lot of times people will tell me they get their best answers walking the dog or taking a shower or taking the train into work or something like that. So it often comes when you don't expect it. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Finish what you're saying.
No, I just think because business is changing so much, I do think we're having to access a different part of our brain to get more information, maybe that when we would have done in the past, because everything is changing so much. But I would imagine that that first business you started, a lot of the business models that you based it on probably you wouldn't do now. Things have changed so much.
Oh, what a joke
Yeah.
that was, the
Yeah.
first one. But but I
Oh,
did
I'm
do a good.
curious now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I did do a good job of risk reward. So I did a good job of minimizing the risk I was taking, and being able to understand the market before I dove into it. And that has always been a consistent theme throughout my
Hmm.
businesses, to get out there, test it, see what's out there without putting a big risk into it. Um, and I want to go back to what you said. He goes, "How do I?" Get intuition too. I'm a very verbal person, so I actually I have like I did it this morning. I was having a problem, and I called up my business partner. I said, help me think through this problem.
Good
This
idea.
is what I think is happening, but help me. So that's a big part of my process. I often need to get it out of my head. I need to talk to somebody about it. They can always just listen. I don't even need them to give me an answer. I just
Right.
need to get it
It's
out.
processing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
So that goes
agree.
back to what you're saying about journaling,
Hmm.
right? Like writing it down. And this psychologist that I knew said that the power of journaling, of getting it out, and you don't have to go back and read what you wrote,
Right.
is very
It's
powerful.
kind of a data dump of, yes,
Yes.
these are all the things I'm thinking, feeling, here are my options. And you said something I think very important too that I really encourage people to do. When you do have an intuitive idea, some aha moment that comes in, it's really helpful to take small steps towards it. It's not a quit my job, start a new business kind of thing, but it's like, let me talk to some people, let me read some books about it, let me maybe write something on my blog about it. Just I call it putting the energy out there. But that's really helpful because then you can see as you proceed and you keep taking action, what shows up. Does it still feel like a good idea? What feedback are you getting from people? So that's something obviously that you do regularly that really helps. Some people just get so caught up in the maybe I should do this, maybe this is my intuition, I don't know, and you have to start somewhere. I call it
Yeah.
feel the fear and do it anyway is one of my favorite mottos
Well,
because
you
it
can't
always feels a
be.
little
Listen,
scary.
I don't think you can be a business owner if you can't make decisions.
No.
Honestly,
Mm-mm.
you can't. You got to be able to make decisions. I mean, the other thing I would say too, and I'll try to keep this short, but your state of mind, I think,
Mhm.
has a big effect on the decisions you
Absolutely.
make. And One of the examples I will tell our listeners and Lynn as well. It was, so to make a concrete example, this is like the worst case scenario. So I mentioned this on one of my episodes, but the I was like 7 years into my second company, and like most entrepreneurs, I was not good at managing people. I was horrible at it, and so I really it was a really good company. It just kicked butt, and I felt terrible the way I treated my employees. I felt like I got angry at them all the
Hmm.
time. And so I was a young guy, and so I went to see a psychologist, and I
Hmm.
said, I feel bad that I treat people so poorly. And what she taught me, and I wish she could teach me in one session instead of 6 months, but she taught me where when I get angry, and this was her, I get dumb.
Yeah.
That was when I can't think. It's hot, it's a hot
Yeah.
emotion. And
Right.
I'm a practicing Buddhist, and that the idea behind emotions affecting your decision making
Right.
is very core to a lot of Buddhism.
Hmm.
That's
For
why
sure.
meditation is so important.
Hmm.
And so I think that, it's interesting how a decision can be made when you're under distress versus a decision that's made when you are calm, and how your intuition potentially changes at
Right.
that moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's really very wise. And so I'm just curious, what did she tell you to do? Was it to back away, center yourself in some way, come back
Yeah.
when you felt like you were in a calmer state of mind?
So
Kind
she
of
was
what as a parent we say, go to your room and calm down.
Yeah, yeah. So she's really talented. I thought she was a really experienced psychologist, and she tried to force me to come up. She didn't come out and say it. She forced me to come up with my own solution,
Hmm.
and my solution, and I do it to this day. It really works for me. Is first she had to teach me what happens, how I get dumb, and I had to recognize it. And
Yeah.
then and what she would do is get me angry. She
Hmm.
would get me angry, and I saw that I couldn't think. And then the second thing I came up with her, and I said, I went into her session, and I go, I think I have an answer. Whenever I feel that the urge of anger is coming on, I will say to somebody, let me think about it. Let me think about what you've said.
Wow.
And it works. It
Yeah.
gives me a chance to kind of take a step back
Hmm.
and regroup. And for me, it's a trigger that I'm getting angry for
Right.
myself.
Hmm.
In fact, at the time, I think I got to a point where I told my employees too.
Oh, interesting. So you kind of clued
Yeah,
them in on it, so they knew what was going on, and
well,
they knew
and so
that
they
you
could
were
help
trying
me.
to, yeah, so that they knew that this was an issue for you. You were working on it, which is probably a
Yeah,
good thing
and
right there.
anytime you get a business owner who says I have a fault, I'm not
Yeah,
perfect,
makes you feel
and,
more open to them. Mm,
and they feel I'm a human being,
right.
because they're, by the way, all our listeners should know they're scared shitless of you,
Right.
and I didn't know that, you
Yeah.
know.
I had a
Um, I-
boss once who was a yeller and a screamer. It was very intimidating, and I couldn't keep staff, so I get it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But,
and
I
God,
think you've got a really good point there, because we all have some issue that we deal with, and I think that anger, or that what I see a lot is the negative self-talk, which is a version of that, is it, and it sort of makes you dumb too when you start, what's wrong with me? Why is Steven succeeding and I'm not? What's so the and you start telling yourself, kind of flooding yourself with a lot of negative emotion. Same sort of outcome. You can't think clearly, and you can't get good intuitive wisdom that way either, because your brain is too kind of locked down into shutdown mode.
yeah,
So paying attention to what you say to yourself, because I think sometimes those things are self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, I'm exaggerating or oversimplifying, but if you're walking around going, why isn't my business being successful? Why can't I hit that, $25 million mark? Why, you really I don't think you open yourself up to the intuitive wisdom. So I think that's why, again, those questions to ask yourself, what can I do to be more successful? What do I need to do today to move in the right direction? And spending a little bit of time in quiet, which it sounds like kind of what your psychologist was saying. I mean, it's not
Yes.
like you have to sit and contemplate your navel for an hour, but even just going for a walk, being out in nature, sitting at your desk, putting on some calming music, all of those things open you up to more guidance, more creative inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of impact in what you just said. The first thing is, what really helped me too is I had a mentor for over 20 years who was super smart, and I would see him every 3 months for lunch, and I would go and I would do exactly what you said. I would be like, "Oh, we're not doing well, and we're not, we should be doing better," and like that. And he would look at my numbers and talk to me. He'd be like, "You're doing great." Like
Wow.
he was like he wasn't lying,
Hmm.
but he gave me more um positive reinforcement because I was so driven,
Yeah.
to do well. He'd be like, "You're doing really well. Just keep doing what you're doing." And for a young entrepreneur at the time, I think, especially in my 30s, it's something that was very helpful for me. So it kind of backs up what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that to me, that's really what the concept of listening to your inner CEO is like, because your inner CEO isn't going to be scolding you, you're a jerk, you screwed up, you're not making enough money. It's usually that part of us, not to get too woo woo about it, but it's kind of our inner cheerleader. It basically does usually what you're saying your mentor does. You're doing okay, keep doing this, how about trying that? I mean, those are usually when you feel calmer, more peaceful, more encouraged. That's usually your inner CEO talking to you and encouraging you forward, just like what your mentor did.
Yeah,
Usually,
and
yep,
yeah,
go
and
ahead.
I think the other thing that helped me when I was younger too, the same therapist, but I think I came up with it on my own, was thinking that I had to have all the answers because I was young, was 35. Every business that I've gone into has not been related to the previous business.
Wow,
So I've
that's
had
pretty
to,
amazing.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I've had to learn things. And my second business, I have the young employees who are working for me, and they're looking to me for all the answers, and I'm like, trying to hide the idea that because they think I should know it all.
right.
And when I got better and more confident in myself, I got more better at saying to them, I don't really know.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It was okay. Now I didn't say it about everything. I mean, because I did know, but for certain things, I didn't make up a story or feel bad or get angry because I didn't know it. I'd say, I really don't know. Let's go figure it out. You know?
Well, that's also you empowering your employees too to say, let's figure this out together, or I don't know, and let's come up with some creative solutions here. Let's figure it out together. I mean, that's a great teaching moment, similar to kind of what your mentor was doing with you. So you're
Yes.
really empowering them as well. So and helping them
Yeah.
be future entrepreneurs. Yeah.
So tell me the big takeaway. Tell me some of the big takeaways in the book that you wrote.
Mm. Well, the book is Put Your Intuition to Work. And it's got a lot of, I love practical how to books because I think that sometimes there's a lot of philosophy about trusting your intuition or how to run a business. So it's a lot of techniques. I mean, because I think that there's no one way that's the right way to trust your intuition. A lot of it is asking your intuition questions, knowing how, again, feelings, images, words, pictures, an inner knowing, a gut feeling. um, One of the things I tell people too is, and maybe this is obvious, but to try to be clear as possible about what you want, because intuition is very much like your inner GPS, to use a different analogy than inner CEO. When you use your GPS, you say, oh, I want to go to a restaurant in downtown New York or downtown Boston or something, gives you direction. Your intuition does much the same thing when you're clear about the outcome that you want, whether it's X number of dollars or to win an account or something. You'll start getting guidance about how to do that. And Again, it often comes in very intangibly. It's not a big booming voice. I mean, we sometimes call it a still, quiet inner voice for a reason. It might be an inner voice. Try this. Call that person. I mean, maybe it was the part that guided you to your psychologist or to meet your mentor in the first place. But it always guides you towards what you want. And I think often we start focusing on what we don't want or what we fear rather than what we want.
Mm.
So I like telling people to kind of write out what's the scenario of this business being successful? What does it look like when you're successful? Is it, you're taking it public? Is it that you're making this much money? Is it that you've got great widgets out there in the world? And then it just really, there's a lot about being, just quieting your mind down as much as possible. Again, doesn't take a lot of time, but just kind of asking yourself, what do I need to do to get there? And again, finding that notepad, the journal, really helpful brainstorming some ideas. But part of it is simply to know that there's another part of your brain to access that does have wise guidance. And that's what Malcolm Gladwell's book is about too, that we know without knowing. And so we have a part of our brain that we don't always utilize. I mean, our culture is very fast paced, very logical, rational, data driven. And so it's nothing about what I'm saying is saying ignore that. It's, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, it's a balance between the two. And we often just, exclude the intuitive piece, the inspirational piece.
You had asked me earlier, how do I get my
Mm,
intuition? How do you get your intuition?
yeah.
How do people get their intuition? What's the right answer?
Well, it's funny when I'm working with a client, so I do intuitive sessions with people to kind of use both of our intuition to kind of come up with some good, really creative solutions. So it's interesting. I get it differently there than if I'm just using it in my own life. But usually it's more of an inner knowing. I kind of close my eyes when I'm doing it, and I might get an image, a picture, a word. But the one that comes through to most people, and it's very intangible, is just a knowing. That just feels like the right answer. So it's partly a feeling, partly a knowing is sort of an ephemeral word. It's hard to define it. And the other big way is just getting it as an inner voice. My business started at a friend's funeral. By trusting that inner voice. I had wanted to start this business and went to his funeral, felt very guided to sit next to this woman I didn't know. There was lots of people in the audience that were of the funeral home that I wanted to sit next to. And I ended up sitting next to this woman, kind of like, what the heck am I doing sitting here? And at the end of the service, she and I started chatting, small talk, and she was asking me, what do you do for a living? And I was the operations manager of an IT company in Boston at the time. But I ended up telling her my interest in intuition, and I really wanted to help people trust their intuition. And she ended up asking me for an individual session. And at the end of it, she said, I didn't really tell you this, but I'm a writer for the Boston Globe newspaper, and I'd love to write an article about you and your sessions. And I ended up getting over 500 clients in the next month.
Wow.
So I know. So that was 35 years ago, Stephen.
Wow.
And here I am, 7 books and, multiple bestsellers and traveling to lots of different countries to teach the intuition seminars. So it's pretty amazing. So it was definitely an inner voice moment that launched my business at a funeral.
You,
I don't think too many people can claim that.
no, although, maybe I'll start thinking differently when I go to a funeral, you know.
You never know who
I
you're
think
going
there's
to
an
sit next
opportunity
to.
there. Um, so let's go to tell me a little bit about what your coaching sessions are
Mm,
like.
yeah. Well, people usually come to me when they're in the midst of change and transition, trying to figure out next steps. So it might be, changing a business or leaving a business. Often it's about how to grow the business. Sometimes it's about employees or partners that they're having difficulty with. Um, so, what I do is I'm in my own mind always asking myself questions. What is it about that person? What's going on? What are the strengths and weaknesses? And I get that as a knowing. I get that and so again, been doing it for 35 years and have most of my clients are entrepreneurs, small business owners, CEOs. So somebody called me a psychic in a suit. I kind of like that. Little woo woo, but anyway, I think a decade or so ago, I don't think we would have had coaches. We didn't,
Yeah.
that was kind of a new phenomena. And I do think that as the world changes more and more, we're going to have more people who are intuitives. Who we all have a gift. Some of us are more artistic, some of us are more musical, some of us are more logical, rational. And I think some of us are, born to be more intuitive and so kind of see things under the surface that other people don't see.
Yeah, I had a coach for 8 years early on,
Mm,
and she was great. And it wasn't what she told me; it was the questions she asked that
right.
helped me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there was a variety of reasons why I brought her on, but again, that was so that had to be 25 years ago.
Mm,
Wow, yeah,
I know. Starts to make
and
you feel old.
yeah, well, let's not go there. But yeah, I'm doing good. I mean, 50. I'm 57, and I'm act like I'm
I
whatever.
know.
I'm
Age is very
37.
weird. I don't know. My
Yeah.
mother
Well,
decided she was going to stop at 35, and that's, I
yeah.
think
Well,
I'm going to do the same.
my mother, who's 98, used to reverse the numbers, but then
Mine
now
did
she's
too.
yeah, but now she's 89. It doesn't sound so good. So
No, I
yeah,
know.
but now she's 98. She's doing well. We all want her to make 100. That's exciting.
Wow. Yep.
Um, but yeah, so I think I think that the it is an interesting concept when Malcolm Gladwell came out with that book, and the idea that it was like I do think it's amazing how we stopped using our intuition, and
Hmm.
it took Malcolm Gladwell's book to kind of say, hey,
Yeah.
your intuition is as valuable
Right.
as data.
Well, he did a really good job, in my opinion, of taking it out of the woo-woo, new agey category and really putting it into much more practical terms of how we could use it, that it's a helpful resource. It's not a either or data or intuition, but it's a combination of both. But we know without knowing. And we know, we don't know how we know it. But I think when you get an intuitive impulse, whether it's about a person, an employee, a partner, something going on in your business, to just pay attention to it. I mean, it does. It's subtle, but it often feels a little bit different than your logical, rational mind. And so it's kind of paying attention to how you get it. It is a skill like any other skill, whether it's playing the piano or learning how to program something. The more you use it, the better you get at it. So it's maybe helpful just to use it in small ways, small decisions at first, and see how it plays out, see how you got the information, because practice definitely makes it a lot better.
You mentioned that you wrote other books.
Hmm.
Tell me each one of the books,
Oh
the
my goodness.
titles.
Okay. Well, I've got the put your into. I have two of them here. So there's the put your intuition to work. The one previous to that was divine intuition. So a little bit more of a spiritual spin on it, because I
Wow.
think that we're all hardwired for intuition, and to me, it's a spiritual thing too. It's something that, I mean, I think it probably initially started out in very primitive days where you got intuition about staying out of danger and finding food and water, and it was kind of on that level that we got it. Another book was Listen, Trusting Your Inner Voice in Times of Crisis, because that's really when we need to use it quite often. And whether we've gotten fired from a job or had a health crisis or divorce or something big like that, intuition can often really help us in that transition, that we can't always just rely on our logic or rational abilities or what other people think we should do. And often when and you've kind of spoken to it indirectly, that when we go through those big transitions in life, it's you can feel really shut down and really scared and really alone. And intuition, I believe, is always there guiding us, and one of the ways that I tell people to think about their intuition is when something feels consistently draining, boring, enervating, that's your intuition saying, don't go there, move away from it. There's something that's not life giving about it. And so when someone's in a transition, probably, I'm sure your coach asked you sort of questions like this, is what feels exciting? What are you curious about? What energizes you? What do you like to study? What do what do other people tell you you're good at? What lights you up? So that's your intuition guiding you in that direction.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways to use it, but that's one of the very basic ways I think of.
Yeah,
I
what's
also wrote.
interesting. What was the other
Go ahead.
books? Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
A Real Prosperity. I wrote a book on abundance because I think abundance is something that we're always kind of tuning into. I think of money as something, it's not something you get, it's something you tune into. It's an energy. So I wrote about that. I also wrote a book called Trust Your Gut and Grow Your Business. So I think that was all. I'm looking at my bookcase
Yeah.
over there. Compass of the Soul. That was the other one. They're all on my website, lynnrobinson.com. So you can see them all there.
It's interesting, like you actually, each of those books that you had, it could actually just be a chapter in the book.
Right.
And then you actually took it and, you dove into each one of
Each,
those in
yeah.
great detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the abundance is a different note. It just made me think of it. Uh, my wife and I actually hired at one time a parenting coach, and we knew we were good at parenting already because we had great parents, both of us, and it was no issue. It's just, I said, we spent all this money on business training and business
Good
coaching,
point.
and the most important job in your life is being a great parent. So I saw this guy speak, and I said, "Hey, listen, once every 2 weeks, do you think you could coach us?" And it
Hmm.
was good. It was really good. And one of the things he said, going back to abundance, is he goes, in a large majority of the cases, you have to teach your children how to handle the abundance in the world.
Right.
That, we're all in this old school mindset.
Right.
If that you got to make money, you got to make money, you got to make money. And he said, I'm exaggerating, but he said, most kids in the United States, many kids, have an abundance of food,
Hmm.
have an abundance of
Stuff.
resources. Yeah, all the different stuff, toys, whatever it is. And as a parent, you have to help them recognize that they do have the abundance, and teach them what to do about it as well.
Yeah.
So was that what your
And
book was
and
about?
yeah, and also just really how to do something that you love to do. I mean, how many of us have grown up with parents who thought, "Oh, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. There's no other way. There's no other way that you could make money. Do something like that that's seemingly profitable." And so, I think that, my take on what you're saying is just to really teach kids to do something that they love to do. And look,
Mm,
if I can make a living doing this, I figure anybody can make a living doing anything. But
yeah,
I just think it's really, to me, when I'm talking to people who are going through a transition, it's move towards what you love to do, and then you'll
yeah,
figure out a way to make money at it.
yeah,
Because it's a service that's needed out there, a product that's needed out there in the world. There is a way to make money at it.
yeah,
So it's like really a lifestyle choice. So, I
yeah,
mean, I just, I believe the root of the word enthusiasm is from the Greek root meaning God within. And so I think when you follow your enthusiasm, what you're enthusiastic about, that's your God within or your guidance within on a non-religious basis to go in that direction. So that's my big philosophy.
So, let me ask you this last question. Do you think, if you've made bad decisions in your life, a lot of them,
Mhm.
do you think you need to second guess your intuition?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say I would probably more start with helping somebody examine their own belief system. I'm not
Mm,
lucky. I make bad decisions. People don't like me. Other people are successful, but I'm not. That's usually what I hear on a mindset level from people who have made bad decisions over and over again. It's interesting. I did a show on Anderson Cooper one time about being lucky. And a lot of what I found in my research was that people who were lucky believed they were lucky. They talked to people, and they also were very intuitive and trust their intuition. So it was an interesting combination of factors that went into that. But I often find that the people who are making bad decisions, there's sometimes like a basis upon which they base their life that's all about, I'm not good at something. I've got, everybody's better than me. I mean, there's a lot of reasons it could happen, but I think that intuition is always guiding you in the right direction. But you have to look at sometimes that self talk.
well, it's all really good stuff.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to love this podcast. I
Oh, good.
talked more than I normally talk on the podcast. You're the guest. I'm not the guest. Okay.
But
So,
I
I
enjoyed
mean,
listening to you.
well, it was a good conversation. So I'd like to thank so very much Lynn
You're entirely
Robinson from
welcome.
Intuitive Consulting for coming on to today's podcast. And if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And please also, if you liked today's podcast and any of the other ones, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps the word get out. The Entrepreneur MBA podcast has become very popular and it's listened to by thousands of people. I'm so impressed. I've been doing it for 4 years and it's fun. And but also, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. Again, that's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com. Lynn, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
My website is lynnrobinson.com, and I have lots of resources there, quizzes, ebooks on how to trust your intuition, and my books that you find in bookstores and on Amazon. So lynnrobinson.com.
And that's Lynn. So
Right.
Lynn Robinson. Yep. Great. So I want to thank everyone for listening. And I think, listen, let's hit, it was obvious that today what we talked about, and that is really, trust your intuition, and understand it too, maybe, but trust your intuition. And it was a big part of what we talked about today. Everybody else, everybody, all our listeners who are out there, it's still, as of this podcast, it's still summer. It's summer outside. And, you guys are all working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, I'm sure. Make sure you get out and take care of yourself. You're only as good as a boss, as a husband, as a wife, as a CEO, as the way you take care of yourself. So make sure you take care of yourself first, because that's going to play a big part in your business. So everybody, it was great having Lynn on today, and have a great day.